Hi, grade 5. This week we're reading historical fiction in the literature anthology textbook called Bud Not Buddy. Our essential question this week is, how do shared experiences help people adapt to change? All right, just before we start, look at the photo on page 364. How do we know that this is set during an earlier time in history? So look at the cars, for example. The cars are antique models. The boy's clothes and the suitcase that he is carrying, all of these are not modern. So this is how we know this is historical fiction. It has taken place during an earlier time. Bud is a motherless 10-year-old boy growing up in Flint, Michigan during the Great Depression, shuttling between orphanages and foster homes. Bud doesn't have much, but he has a few special things. One is a set of rules. Bud Caldwell's rules and things for having a funner life. Now, he is a kid, which is why he uses the word funner. We know that funner is not a word. Now, when we are comparing using the adjective fun, we must write more fun. About everything he's learned so far about surviving, he also has a suitcase full of treasured possessions, photos, a blanket, some special stones, and flyers advertising a famous band. While these items are the only mementos Bud has of his mother, they also provide clues that Bud thinks may help him find a special man he's never met. His father. Bud tracks down Herman E. Calloway, the well-known band leader who Bud believes to be his father. Calloway turns out to be a gruff old man who claims not to know anything about the boy. Fortunately, Calloway's band members, Grace Thomas, Steady Eddie Patrick, Jimmy Wesley, Chug Doo Doo Bug, Cross, Roy Dirty Deed Breed, and Doug the Thug Tennant take a liking to Bud after Bud joins the band for a meal at the Sweet Pea restaurant where he breaks down and cries out of exhaustion and relief. Bud is invited to spend the night in a spare room at Grand Calloway Station, Herman Calloway's large and busy home. The next morning, a still tired Bud doesn't remember getting in bed and wonders if he was put there by Miss Thomas. As Bud shakes off sleep, he hears voices in the house and follows them downstairs. So, some of you may know about the Great Depression. What was the Great Depression? It was a historical period in history, and this is where the story was. This is the period in which the story is set. In this period, many people were losing their jobs. All right, so it began in 1929. It ended around 1940. During this time, again, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes. Thousands of children had to live in orphanages, sometimes because their families could not afford to care for them, or because maybe their parents left them to find work. When possible, the children were placed in foster homes. So this is how Bud has been living back and forth between orphanages and foster homes. Right when I got near the kitchen door, I could hear Herman E. Calloway saying, "So that's how that cookie's going to crumble." Miss Thomas said, "You have no idea how bad those orphanages can be. It's no place to be raised. I can't believe you. You'll take care of any stray dog wandering through the neighborhood. But when it comes to a child, all of a sudden you have no sympathy. You might not have been paying attention, but we agreed last night what we were going to do about that boy, and that's what we're sticking to." Uh-oh, I was glad I didn't take anything out of my suitcase, 'cause it looked like I might be making a break for the street again. Herman E. Calloway said, "Like I said, I'ma find out what the real story is in Flint, and then we'll see." Miss Thomas said, "That's fine. I believe the child. You, above all people, should know that I've got a sense about when someone is lying." Uh-oh, I'd have to remember that. She kept talking. "Until we've heard otherwise from Flint, he's staying right here." A fourth voice said, "Well, I'm glad to hear it. That means I didn't go digging around in the basement for nothing. I think he's going to really like this." All right, notice here the dialect. We said a dialect is a specific way of speaking. Different regions of the country often have their own dialects, as different groups throughout history have had also. So dialect means slang, right? So here we have examples of dialect on page 366. I'm a, This means I'm going to. Uh-oh. So all of these are examples of dialect, and we will find more as we read. Okay, so the fourth voice here is on page 367. It was Steady Eddie, and it sounded like he had something for me. I ran back up the steps on my tiptoes and down the hall to the little dead girl's room. I stood outside the room and closed the door loud enough that they could hear it downstairs. I clumped down the hall to the door that Miss Thomas said was the bathroom. When I was done, I pulled on a chain that made the water come down. The loud noise made me jump back. Man, these inside the house outhouses were hard to get used to. I washed my hands with running hot water and closed the bathroom door kind of loud. I clumped down the steps, stopping a couple times to yawn real loud. I said, "Good morning." When I walked into the kitchen, they all had looks on their faces like they hadn't been talking about me at all. I said, "Good morning, Mr. Calloway," but I didn't really mean it. Then said, "Good morning, Miss Thomas. Good morning, Mr. Jimmy. Good morning, Steady Eddie." So, why did he go back upstairs? He wanted to make sure that the people downstairs know that he's coming down. All right. What do you think that Steady Eddie has for Bud? So he said that he had something for him. What do you think it is? Remember that they are a musical family and they are all musicians. So what do you think he might give him? I noticed right away that Miss Thomas didn't have all her diamond rings on. I guess it would have been hard sleeping with them flashing lights up at you. She must have to keep them closed up in a box that the sparkles can't get out of. I noticed too that even without the rings, Miss Thomas still had to be the most beautiful woman in the world. They smiled and said, "Good morning, Bud," all except Herman E. Calloway. He got up from the table and said, "I don't like the way Loudine is sounding. I'm gonna have to look at her plugs." He went outside through a door at the back of the kitchen. Miss Thomas said, "Bud, we'd just about given up on you. Do you usually sleep until afternoon?" Afternoon? Man, I couldn't believe it. I'd slept as long as those rich folks in the moving pictures. "No, ma'am, that's the first time I ever did that." She said, "I know you must be starving, but if you can hold out for another half hour or so, Mr. Jimmy's going to make everyone's lunch." "Think you can wait?" "Yes, ma'am," and half an hour was nothing to wait, no matter how hungry you were. Mr. Jimmy said, "So what's the scoop, little man?" I didn't know what that meant, so I said, "Nothing, sir." Steady Eddie said, "How'd you sleep, kiddo?" "Great, sir." "Oops, I forgot I wasn't supposed to call the bandmen sir." He said, "Cop a squat." He pointed at a chair. I guess that meant sit down, so I did. Miss Thomas said, "Were your ears burning last night, Bud? Man, all these Grand Rapids people really do talk funny. I only came from the other side of the state, and it was like they talk some strange language out here." I said, "What, ma'am?" She said, "There's an old saying that when people talk about you behind your back, your ears start to get real warm, kind of like they were burning." I said, "No, ma'am. My ears felt just fine." She said, "Well, they should have been burning. You were the subject of a very long conversation last night. But as sound asleep as you were, I'm really not at all surprised that you didn't notice. I had to check your pulse to make sure you were still alive." Shucks, I knew it. She did come in when I was conked out and took my doggone pants and shirt off and put me there. Man, this was real embarrassing. Miss Thomas said, "Mr. Calloway and the band and I talked about you for a long time. We've come up with something we want to discuss with you, but we need your help in deciding what to do." Uh-oh, that was Rules and Things number 36 or something. That meant I was going to have to get ready to go fetch something for her. I said, "Yes, ma'am." So Miss Thomas says that the adults need Bud's help in deciding what to do. Bud thinks that he's going to have to fetch something to get something. We know that also Miss Thomas wants to take care of him. So do you think she's going to put Bud to work? What do you think that Miss Thomas wants from Bud? She said, "We've got to talk to some people in Flint first, but if they say it's all right, we were hoping that you'd stay here at Grand Calloway Station for a while." A gigantic smile split my face in half. Miss Thomas said, "I'm going to assume that that smile means yes." I said, "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." Miss Thomas said, "Before that grin gets stuck on your face, let me tell you you're going to have lots of chores and things to take care of around here. Bud, you'll be expected to pull your own weight the best you can. We all like a very clean house, and none of us are too used to having children around. So we're all going to have to learn to be patient with each other. There's one person in particular that you're going to have to be very patient with. Do you know who I mean? I sure did. Yes, ma'am, it's Mr. Calloway. She said, good boy, give him some time. He really needs help with a lot of different things. He swears someone's adding weight onto that bass fiddle of his every year. Onto that bass fiddle of his every year. But he's just getting older. He can use some young, wiry hands to help him around. Think you can handle that? Now I knew for sure she'd looked at my legs. She must have thought I was a real weakling. I said, yes, ma'am, my legs are a lot stronger than they look. Most folks are surprised by that. Miss Thomas said, I don't doubt that at all, Bud. I'm not worried about your body being strong. I'm more concerned about your spirit. Lord knows Mr. Calloway is going to give it a test. I said, yes, ma'am, my spirit's a lot stronger than it looks, too. Most folks are really surprised by that. She smiled and said, very good, but you know what, Bud? What, ma'am? I knew you were an old toughie the minute I saw you. I smiled again. All right, so what does this mean? Here we have an idiom at the top of the page, split my face in half. This means that his smile noticeably spread all across his face. All right, we used the clues. I'm going to assume that smile and before that grin gets stuck on your face. All of these are context clues that help us figure out the meaning of the idiom, split his face in half. All right, so at the bottom here, Miss Thomas says that Mr. Calloway is going to give Bud a test and give Bud's spirits a test. So we know that Mr. Calloway is very stubborn, but he does not want to admit it. So maybe he will not be nice with Bud. Maybe he will not be cooperative with Bud. And Bud is going to have to learn how to deal with Mr. Calloway to help change his mind so that he is happy living there. She said, our schedule is pretty heavy for the next couple of months, and then come September, we'll have to see about school for you. But we'll be doing a lot of traveling right around Michigan, so I hope you don't mind long car trips. No, ma'am. She said, that's great, Bud. Something tells me you are a godsend to us. You keep that in mind all the time, okay? Yes, ma'am. Then she did something that made me feel strange. She stood up, grabbed both my arms, and looked right hard in my face, just like Mama used to. She said, really, Bud, I want you to always keep that in mind. This might get hard for you some of the time, and I don't always travel with the band, so I don't want you to forget what I'm telling you. I said, no, ma'am, I won't. So why does Mrs. Thomas here hold on to Bud's arms and she tells him not to forget their conversation? She knows that he is happy to be with them, but he may not realize how difficult it's going to be living with to be working with a band. So she's afraid that probably he will run away from them if things get hard. All right, Miss Thomas says to Bud, this might get hard for you some of the time, and I don't always travel with the band. So she says this because Bud has a history of running away, and she knows that this is good for him. This is a place to stay, and she knows that he will be treated well.